Okay, a couple of issues here with the sound settings, so let me kind of investigate this a little bit. Let's see what's happening here. So if there's any feedback out there on the different channels of whether or not, audible, feel free to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually check this on my phone. See what the problem is. Maybe that's happening here. Okay. So far, so good. Okay, that doesn't work on the phone because I'm live. Then let's see whether or not I can. I cannot. See to get this to work. Okay. Let's see what Twitch is saying. That's probably Shield's issue from Brave. Let's load this quickly and see. Okay. Is anything happening here? Twitch doesn't seem to work for whatever reason. Well, so here's what I'm going to see if this is a general problem here.
I think the sketchy website.
Okay. Can anyone provide some feedback of whether or not this actually works? So that seems to be a little bit the issue today, that we have some form of problem here. Okay. Let's quickly see the other channels. Okay. Okay, let's quickly go to the Tor browser and see what's happening here. Okay, Google blocked me. Okay, this is really interesting. So in theory it seems to work, but there's something wrong with the IP address. Where it might be kind of like blocked for whatever reason. So feel free to give me a any kind of feedback of whether or not this is working or not. So I'm wondering if I can just try out the following here. Let's see that if at least YouTube's working. Okay. So that seems to somewhat work. See if the sound's working now. Okay, sorry for the feedback, but I just have to test this. Okay. Well, I guess it's working. So let's just start. Kind of unusual behavior, but it is what it is. Okay, so what are we going to do? So we had this kind of like technical issue, right? So I already have set up my neoan3 project here. It's an empty project that basically does nothing. So as a little reminder, so what you want to do is to kind of like start out with making sure that you have the newest version of the neoan3 CLI tool. So you would say composer global update, run that. Right, shouldn't do anything for me right now. And then I ran the neoan3 new app command, which at the moment I can't do, so I won't do it. And that should give me with this, get me with that, right? So what I am going to do, right? So in the first thing that I'm going to do is to basically say, okay, let's start the development server. So neoan3 develop. Just to make sure everything is running as planned. And so let me switch over here to the full-fledged approach here. So what you see here, and actually I made a change to this guy here. Sorry, this is not necessary for you, but it is for me. And then basically what we end up with is this kind of like default behavior here, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to plan for a header to exist. So I'm going to open up a new terminal and say neoan3 new component, call it header, and well, for now I'm going to say, okay, this is a route component. Yes, I want to have a view, and yes, I want to use a frame. And since demo is my only frame, that's the frame I'm going to use. Okay. So this should allow us to basically go to slash header and basically see how that is going to look like, right? So I'm going to go into component, header view, right? Just let it instruct it, right? So like, okay, this is where it actually is. So far, so good. Now, what I want to do is to create an actual header here, right? So in order to do that, I'm going to get rid of this container. And in here, I'm probably going to get rid of all of this. make this easy and say, actually, this is a section, has a couple of classes. So it is a grid 210, right? It's a 12 grid system, and we're using the so the demo ships with the regular Gaudiamos CDN. So I can basically say, okay, this is what I kind of want. So here would be my logo section, right? The logo and the menu section, where I say here the menu. Okay, very basic setup here. And now let's basically take care of a couple of basics when it comes to how this looks like. So I want to have a BG primary in this case. And I want to have a padding of 3. Okay, so what this will give us is basically kind of like the overall look and feel of our header bar. I probably also want to say, hey, let's place X, and let's place the menu links on the right. Right, so let's push this over, depending on the space that we have for this. So here I'm going to have a very simple link, and that is going to basically be my home link. Right, so let's do it like this for now. So ultimately probably going to be an image, but for now it's just going to say logo, which is fine. And here are ultimately going to be my A tags. So I'm not sure how this is going to look like as of now. So the href will probably be base, and then let's say about. Right, and let's basically decide how those links look like. So I want them to have a border around it, a border of 1, and a border white. Right. Yep. And there are a couple more things I want. So I want this to have a padding on the x-axis of 2. And I want the text color, the text to be white. I want the text decoration to be none. Yep. That's more how I like it. And what I also want is that on hover, it should be raised 1 white with an opacity of 50. Right, so when I hover it, raised 1 white. This does not work. Save it first. It's not called raised, it's called raised. That's why. Yeah, see? Okay. Got it. Let me take the 50 back here. Too strong. Yeah, that's about the effect I want to have. Okay. So far so good for our header, I guess. So of course this route doesn't really exist. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means that we should probably create an about, but that's not even the point. The point is, if I click here, I'm going to go back to home right now, which is the demo itself, which we don't want. So let me create a home in the first instance, right? And say, okay, new component, home. And in this case, I don't want to answer anything, so I'm going to say, okay, the type is route, the frame is demo, and the and yes, we're going to have a view. Okay, and in the next step, I want this to be the default route. So I can do this also directly with the CLI and say neoan3 set default controller to home. Okay, so if I reload this, then I now get to this home that we just generated. So Of course, I want on all of my routes, I want to have the header included. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the frame, right, and say, okay, let's go into the demo frame and kind of like question what the markup is here. So there's nothing, I don't need to worry about DB credentials or anything at this point. What I'm going to do is instead of this, I'm going to say this hook. I'm going to say, hey, in general, right? Just on every route that you're doing, fill the header hook with the view, which ironically is also called header at this point. And if I then reload it, then you can see my header is attached to those routes here. Perfect. My about still doesn't exist, but let's not worry about this. Let's go into the home and actually start with what we want to do. So what we want to do is we want to display our own posts to dev.to today, right? So I'm going to quickly go to my own profile and basically say, okay, so those kind of cards here, right? Those we want to get. See that? That's the kind of stuff we want to get. So the first thing that we probably want to do is to kind of like make sure that we have some kind of scraping capabilities. So here's the simple idea. Let's first go to home, controller, and see what's happening here. So we're loading the frame demo, right? And in our hook main, we're going to show the home.view, right? Which is this. What we see here. Home is exactly this. Okay, so that's relatively straightforward, which basically means if I make any kind of changes here and say welcome, then I would see this here directly. So what we want to do though is we want to kind of like hook into this and say, okay, so we want to gather some web scrape content first in order to basically be able to even start building this out. So before I'm hooking this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a callback with a function that in that case receives the context. So I'm just kind of calling this context so I don't have to call it this here, right? And I also know that at the end of the day, I'm going to return context. Now, since we're working kind of like inline at this point, right? So this is the singleton approach. As you can see, it extends Unicore instead of demo. So I'm going to write this in the singleton context, so in the stream of consciousness, which basically means I can read what's happening top to bottom, and I think that is useful for this particular what's it called? Session that we're having, just so we can basically read things as if they were procedural. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I need to somehow get the external content, right? And I'm going to use a simple file get content for that, and just copy that URL over. Right, very straightforward. So if I have that, then the next thing I need is a way to kind of like crawl this. Now, there are multiple ways of actually doing this. Let me see if this is already, yeah. So I have already installed this because it takes forever because it installs all of the, well, you know, all the dev stuff. So what you want to run here is, right, composer require, and then it's symfony, oops, symfony, and actually let me double check what that package is called, just so I don't confuse it with something. Did I not open this? Yeah, DOM crawler, right? So DOM crawler, that's what we're going to use today. So this is not a requirement, by the way. right? You can do stuff like DOM document and XPath, and you don't need any external libraries. But let's make our life a little bit easier today and see whether or not that doesn't kind of help us. Okay, so that's what you want to run. I actually can run this safely. It's probably going to say me nothing to install. Yep, so that's fine. And then I can basically use this crawler. So don't forget, I have an IDE that kind of automatically creates a use for this, right? So here's the Symfony component. DOM crawler crawler is what you actually want to use. Here I could basically put in the context, right? And as a second argument, I'm going to give it the URL. And should you dabble upon the documentation for the Symfony crawler, this is something that you kind of have to figure out by yourself because it's kind of documented somewhere else other than where you would expect it to be. So this is relevant for relative links to be resolved correctly, right? So make sure that you basically have this. So as you can see, I basically say, okay, this is a def.to. So whenever you find relative links, that's what you're going to start with, right? That's basically what I'm going to do. So from that principle on, let's basically first try to get something in the first place, right? So what I want to do, and this is basically how you always start your journey into web crawling, is let's figure out how we identify those, right? So let's have a look at this and basically see, okay, what is this card? This is the card that we're looking for. Okay, so this is a crayon story body. Let's make sure that this is the same is true for here. Yep, same is true for here. Right, so that's the element that we want to find. So let's just copy this class. Of course, you gotta make sure that this is also the only type of element that uses this kind of class. But you know what? Here we're simply going to try it out. We're going to try it out. So what we want to do is to say, okay, crawler, find those elements. It's not find. No, it's not. It's filter. Right. Those elements, and it exposes in each. Right, and expects a closure here in that case. So this is my element, and this is basically now in our iteration what we expect to be. So let's kind of like try this out, shall we? So what I'm going to do here, it's a little bit ugly, but why not, right? So I simply want to say, hey, what is this? And this is hopefully going to give me a DOM element. So let's run this and see what's happening. The filter is this X selector. Okay, got it. That is actually very useful. Error message. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, so we're within the closure, so we don't actually see this, which is kind of ridiculous. Let's kind of rewrite this then, so we have right. Yep. Let's do this differently. Let's actually say I'm going to move this out to another function here. Function get content. Let's call this context. And let's actually move this stuff here. And in our callback, instead of this, we can simply give this a get content. All right, so same thing is happening. same thing is happening, and we still don't get a var dump here, which is kind of curious. Why is that? Why is that? Get content. We are on home controller. This is probably the issue here, huh? Okay, let's just write it to something and then see what we have here. So let's create a private array that we call posts. Right, let's make this empty. And in here, let's basically simply start flying blind a little bit. So we filtered basically this on the body, right? So what we could do now is to basically say we're going to add to posts. Sorry, this posts. And are going to say, actually, let's do this in one step. Do this in one step and say, okay, so within those bodies, right? What we really want is this element, and that is H2A. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that and basically say, hey, a single post is this filter. That's the problem. This element filter, and this element filter will do the A's and the H2. Right? Actually, since I assumed that this dot that I just put here actually makes the difference that we didn't really find anything, let's just try it one more thing here quickly and say element. Yep. Yeah. So that gives us what we're looking for here. Perfect. So here we've got the A, and then we're going to add it to this posts. And are going to say, okay, so what kind of markup we're going to use? We're going to say there's a title, which should basically simply be text. And there is going to be a link, which is going to be, yes, this is called link. And the weird thing with this crawler is, so this just gives you a particular kind of entity, and we want, in this case, to have the get URI. Right? Same is true for images. Like it's a little bit annoying how that crawler works. You kind of have to learn it a little bit, but as soon as you do, it does make a lot of sense. So once you have that, then we have this posts attached, and basically this should already be possible to render this. Right, so let's give this a quick shot. Let's say, hey, let's give this this posts, and then look into our home view and say, hey, instead of this, let's create a grid 6, where we're going to have an article. And this article will have an N4 posts as post. And for now, we're simply going to say post title. Right, let's see what that does. So if I now refresh this, then apparently not. This posts. Yeah, okay. So callback, and this returns context. Let's kind of like figure this out. What we have here is an issue. Okay, here it's all in there. It's array. So this post is actually running. And shouldn't really create an issue for us, should it? It's because here's context. It's a context. No, because here this post. No, it's fine. Should be fine. Wonder why that is. Wonder why that is. We probably don't have the post title. Let's create another callback just to make sure. And that we get this up. Call this post. Get this up. And it says undefined property. Okay. Got you. Context issue here. Oh, here it is. Ah. What's it called? The posts, not posts. Okay. Yeah, that looks more like what I expected. Okay. So here's still basically already our list of the posts that we were looking for. Okay. So far, so good. Let's kind of start to see how we want this to actually look like. Right? So what we're going to do is kind of like, okay, let's make this a grid 6.6 and then say, well, but on LG, let's make this a grid 4.4.4. And then let's give this thing a little bit of a class here. So let's just say there's a general margin of 2. We want to have a border around it. We want to say raise 1 primary and a padding of 2. Yep, so far so good. Now let's surround this with something that we kind of like. And in here say A. So this is going to be post link, and within the link we're going to display this title. Let's make sure that this doesn't really look like a link here. So we're going to say, oh yeah, perfect text decoration none, and then we're going to say text primary dark. Okay. Now let's see what we get. Yeah. I guess we can live with that. Okay. So far, so good. Now, let's make ourselves a little bit more important here. And say, hey, I write on stack.to to inform you. Let's be bolder than that and say, let's get into something a little bit different. Let's create a section. I know what we're going to do. Let's create a section. In that case, there's a class of flex and 100% in that case that we want to have this as a width, and then we're going to say overflow auto. Yes, perfect. Then we're going to say diff and for badges as badge, and we create an image with a source of badge, badge, FTO badge. Okay, now let's get our badges. Oh, I thought I've seen them somewhere. Yeah, those guys. Okay. So next thing that we're going to do is to basically say, hey, let's see how we can identify those. Okay. So there's this JS profile badge that seems to be, yeah, let's copy that. So that already sounds very much like this, the only place it would ever show up. Let's give this a shot. And in our crawling, let's here in our home basically say, let's get some badges in. Maybe create that first. Same thing, right? Where we say badges. So we have that, and so this will be something completely else. So after this, we're going to say crawler, filter. This is what I copied over. Let's say each. Here my function with element. See, now it already feels kind of natural, and actually this is what we're going to get rid of. Well, pretty simple, right? Here we've got, so we're going to say this badges is, actually make sure that I get this correct. I have a little bit of feeling. Yeah, so that's that's an A. Yeah, it should be fine. Should be fine. Okay, and then we say element image or img. I kind of forgot. Well, this is the A itself, so sorry, we have to actually filter this. Filter img. That's what we're going to do, right? Then image, and then get array. Yeah, that's probably going to be enough. Let's figure it out. Not so much, but then now that I think of it, we also didn't give this anything, right? So let's pass this in and say badges is nicer here. Actually read it. Badges is this badges. There we go. Okay. Yep. So that basically works. So far so good. Now let's talk strategy a little bit, right? So if I basically make this request every time that I am going to visit this page, it's first of all a little bit redundant, and secondly, like, I'm not really sure if eventually def.to doesn't, you know, block the IP or whatever. So what we want to do is we don't want to do this too often, and I don't think it updates too often. So let's just assume that we're going to go for an hour. Every hour we allow it to actually run this. So in order to do that, let's redesign a couple of things and just assume that, hey, let's create a file that is in the current directory, and we call this content.json. Right? Let's just make this file based for now. That should be easy enough. And then we basically say, okay, if and then file exists, of course, we need to see whether or not that is already there, and file time, right, which gives me the modification time of the file, if it exists in that case. is bigger than, okay, so what, like the current time minus, and then let's just see 3,600 seconds, then just deliver it, right? This differently maybe and say, instead of having those two, let's start by preparing an array of content. And then basically saying, hey, then this content is file get contents of the file. We're storing it as a JSON. Let's do JSON decode of that and give this a true to make it associative. Okay. Right, and just so that the rest doesn't execute in such a case, let's do that and return. Okay, so far so good. Now, if all of this is the case, though, then we're going to do this a little bit differently and say, okay, let's collect our stuff together here, and actually, what we want to do is to start by saying, how do we structure this? This content is badges and posts, right? Okay. And then basically here, the only thing we do here is to say, no, this goes into this content posts, and this goes into this content badges. Then we have this content, and at the end of the day, we kind of need to write this out. Right, so we have it for the next time. So here's going to say file put contents. So file name is still the same, and then we basically say JSON encode this content. Okay, let's see if that made a difference. So the only thing I want to change here in my output here is to say none of this is necessary anymore. We're simply going to say this content. Let's see if that actually runs. Okay. So now this should have been written. Let's kind of verify that by going to home. And yes, see, here's our content. Perfect. Okay. So let's make a little bit of a performance check here. So I'm going to go to Lighthouse and generate a report. See what that brings us with. Kind of. Do not have explicit width and height. Let's make a little bit of a tweak and see, okay, what is the original here? 180. Okay. So I assume that's kind of 180. Yeah, they deliver that in kind of a consistent way. So let's jump in here, and actually, I mean, let's even bother, and say, okay, this is 180, right? Shouldn't make a big difference here, but I guess then just for our ego, we probably correct the 100%. There we go. Yep. Okay. So far, so good. Now, lastly, let's check routing. So we still have this about to go to, right, which right now is not what we want. So let's take care of this and say, all right, neoan3, new component about, and yes, 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 yes. Let's reload this, and here's our about. So if we open that, say, where's our about view? Where are you? Oh, can't find that. For whatever reason. Okay, let's do this manually. Yeah, let's not even worry about this too much, I guess. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to use the use filler here. It's not what it's called. Okay. Right. This super primitive and say, hey, let's not spend our time together here. So we want to have lorem, and then we're going to say rows 5, loop, I don't know what, 8, and do this. This should basically give us, yeah, some kind of placeholder text. Okay, let's try this whole thing out. So here's the about, right, with the badges. Here are the, let's see if the links are working. They are. Lol. Good click. And yeah, basically, it's my about. Let's go back home. Maybe added the header to include a second link here. Where we say home. Okay, and I guess we can live with that, right? And there you go. Now you have your basic DevTO web scrape content version of a SSR. Yeah, so sorry for the technical difficulties earlier, but this was just a little quick, well, I don't even know how to call this, right? Out of a fluke, so to speak. And I hope you enjoyed and are having fun, and I see you the next time. Be sure to kind of like, if you want to follow, then probably the easiest solution is to kind of like just go to the relevant, you know, you see that up there at the top, right? Where are we? Here, the Discord. That link is open, so you can always join and kind of like ask questions when you're working with neoan3. I also do stuff once in a while where I just walk through a project. If you share it on GitHub and say, hey, I want you to have a look at this, or I need some help and so on, don't shy away from actually doing that. Cool. Then I see you guys the next time, and thanks for watching.